are really great for making the program affordable, result in higher development costs. And so we tend to see that minimum threshold at 75 units. And so the development of one larger senior building could be built with less city subsidy than building two smaller senior units, which would be more expensive and also result in inefficient buildings. So therefore, HPD is proposing to fulfill the 80 to 100 unit commitment on Site B. And in doing that, we're able to provide an opportunity for another affordable program on Site A, which is helping us with the furthering fair housing goals. I think we've heard from numerous, excuse me, we've heard from numerous engagements or rather materials and stakeholders that there is a need for affordable units in this community. And so addressing or fulfilling the senior commitment on Site B really opens up another opportunity on Site A. So just to bring up these project goals again, in order for us to achieve these goals and optimize these sites, we've analyzed other zoning designations. And so we want to gather your feedback about the design elements like heights and bulk, which can vary to influence the look and feel of the building. And we look at different combinations of that to allow us to fit the minimum thresholds of the units and the square footage that goes with these community facilities and open space that we want to achieve here, in addition to delivering feasible projects. So we also heard from the kickoff meeting and from questions that have come in about what these minimum thresholds for feasibility are. So again, for the SARA program, which is the senior program, we tend to see that number at 75 units. So in addition to the square footage of all of those apartments, there's also square footage that goes with the residential service amenity. And so in considering that the commitment is for 80 to 100 apartments, the corresponding square footage for those amenities, the goal of including the community facility, and the goal of including open space for the Dean Street playground in needing basically a certain amount of square footage. And so here we, excuse me, yeah, so here we see the need for at least 75 units on one site. And then similarly for Site A, where we don't have a program identified at the moment, we do also still want to optimize the site here. So our other HPD programs also have other minimum units for financial feasibility. So we don't have a program need for heights and bulks that are identified in the R7A zoning in order to optimize the site for all of these goals that we want to achieve. And so we also wanted to note that in our analysis for this, we noticed that there's already several buildings in the immediate area that are taller than the max heights for R7A. So here it feels appropriate to propose that. We also heard some questions about what the rezoning boundaries are. And here, this is determined along with the rezoning district later in the process. So we can't really say at the moment what the district or the boundaries, what the final district and boundaries would be because we don't have a defined project. So a decision about this at this point wouldn't really be accurate. There's still a lot of variables that need to be taken into account along with an actual project. We also heard some questions about Atlantic Yards and some updates on the affordability there, and how that process was. There were a lot of questions with that process. So I just wanted to clarify that the HPD process is a little different from that. These projects would be 100% affordable housing, and we are also targeting deeper affordability levels. There's no market rate units involved here. And our process includes community engagement ahead of building the buildings. So such as we're doing now with our community engagement, but also coming back when there's a project designated and again for public review. These these projects will also go through ULIRP and UDAP with a specific project that would be designated and with a defined program and affordability. And Lynn can speak a little bit more about this if there's something to add. But the last thing on this is that developers also sign documents such as a land disposition agreement and regulatory agreements that hold them to the specified program and the affordabilities. And then the last thing before we go over to Q&A, statistics about vacancy rates in the area and New York City overall, and sort of the concern about why we're proposing new construction house when it seems to be high vacancy rates. So some of the articles that have recently claimed high vacancy rates, we see that. We rely on the New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey, and which is, sorry about that. So we rely on the New York City Housing Vacancy Survey, from which we know that different types of housing stocks have different levels of vacancy. And I can go into a few stats here. So in 2017, that vacancy survey, which is the most comprehensive and thorough analysis, showed that in 2017 in Manhattan, the rental vacancy rate in Manhattan was 4.73%, while in Brooklyn it was 3.28%. And for apartments where the rent was 2,500, the vacancy rate was 8.74. But for apartments with asking rents below 800, the vacancy rate was just 1.15. So we do see stark differences. And we're still in the midst of a housing crisis. And it's going to take time for us to fully assess the impacts, especially of COVID, which has changed quite a number of things in the direction of exacerbating them mostly. So we'll have more accurate information about that on rental rates when we get the newest housing vacancy data. But for now, it's pretty clear that we remain in a housing emergency. We have workers lose their jobs or a portion of their income. We continue to have tens of thousands of neighbors living in shelters and unable to find affordable homes. So we do see a need for the new construction, deeply affordable projects that we're proposing here. Well, not leave, but I will leave this up on the screen as a contact information where you can read. We thank you for your questions while we get back to you. We have been receiving comments and questions, and we are doing our best. And ask for your patience and understanding while we do that. And invite you to our workshop on November 18th to talk more about the design features. And again, on December 18th, back with you all in your general board meeting where we can really that we have learned from you all. That jives with what you are saying as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veras. Your sound was a little spotty towards the end. Are we into the Q&A segment now?
Yes, we are. And apologies for my network connection. I do see that it is spotty on my end, and we'll try to reach in case anything kicks me off here.
Ms. Granville, you have the ball.
Yes, I wanted to know, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, I wanted to know, is there anyone else that's going to present after you, or are you the only presenter?
It's just me.
Okay, all right. So, Adam, I'm gonna need your help because I really can't see the chat with the names on the side. So I know people were sending questions in as she was talking. Hold on a second.
Yeah, do you want me to read some of the questions?
Yes,
Or-
please. Yes, that would help.
I'm just going to find the first one, and I can either read the questions or name that we can let the people ask the question that they tell. I don't.
Okay, well, you can read the ones that you can understand. If you have any problems, then the actual person can ask the question themselves.
Ms. Granville, I think we should let the person ask the question because I see in the chat, some people ask multiple questions.
Okay. Okay.
So Adam, if you could just call the name.
So
I think Sarah was
the
first.
first question was Sarah Lazar.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm a board member, and my question was, I think you maybe answered this question, but it was whether because you talked about the number of units that you're aiming to create in the building in Site B that would have the senior housing, and I was wondering if 100% of that building is just going to be the senior affordable Section 8 subsidized population, or if there was also going to be other populations in there. But I think you said that Site B was just going to be for that senior Section 8. And then for Site A, I understand that HPD hasn't yet figured out what population they're going to target for it, but I guess my concern would just be that if it's going to have, my hope would be that it would be 100% extremely affordable, because I mean, it's just such a huge opportunity there with a piece of land that belongs to the city. I would hope that it's, there, for-profit housing is all over the city, but this is an opportunity to do completely deeply affordable housing. I mean, eventually, I think people are going to, I have questions about the zoning envelope, but I'm sure other people are going to ask it. So those were my first questions.
Yeah, so we can confirm it is 100% affordable senior housing on Site B, just senior population. And for Site A, it would also be affordable units. Is someone from my team trying?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I guess maybe for everybody from HPD to do a quick introduction. So if we want to jump in for questions, we can. So I'm Lynn. Good to see everybody. Welcome to my kitchen. And I'm with Brooklyn Planning at HPD. I work with Catherine. So I think I saw Ifoma and Addison. And Michael, maybe Michael's on, but Ifoma is the director of pre-development. She works with Catherine, and Addison is editor with neighborhood planning. So that's the HPD team. But yeah, on the second building, that's not the senior housing. It will be 100%, and exactly for the same reason, Sarah, that you brought up. It is really our only opportunity to do 100% affordable housing in this neighborhood. And so certainly that's what we're going to ask for in the RFP. And in terms of the type of affordable housing, whether it's another senior housing or family building for family housing, or home ownership. So those are things that we're going to, kind of like get people's ideas on for this RFP. And that's what this community outreach is for. And certainly we just want to be able to take advantage of this opportunity to give as much affordable housing. And, like we know how wonderful this community is. So we definitely want to open up that opportunity to others to have that opportunity to live here.
Okay, I'm going to queue up the next question then, which was from Daphne Eviatar.
Hi, sorry, okay, here's my camera. Thanks. So thanks for this presentation. So my question is really partly it's a question and a concern. So I live right in the neighborhood, right near the proposed construction sites. And as everyone who lives in this neighborhood knows, there's been construction going on for the last 10 years on the Atlantic Yards project, Pacific Park, Barclays Center, all of that. That's 17 high rises. And it's been really, it makes it really hard to live here. It makes it extremely loud and noisy. And so I understand the need for affordable housing. And our concern is, well, there are two major concerns. One is changing the zoning, which would allow for extra height, encourage new construction in that entire block. And primarily the concern is that it's not clear to me, given the real estate conditions in New York City right now, the vacancy rates, which are the 2017 vacancy rate you mentioned is not relevant at this point. And COVID has completely changed the dynamic, not only of both of where people live and where people work. And I think it's irresponsible to embark on a new construction project before determining first, are there more efficient ways of creating affordable housing in this neighborhood and all sorts of places when there are so many vacant buildings. There are so many vacant commercial buildings, office space, residential buildings. I know some of that is temporary, but some of it is not. And it doesn't take a lot when you read predictions about the city. No one's expecting the kind of office work to go back to the way it was. Commercial spaces were already empty even before COVID. So what I'm asking is, why hasn't HPD done a serious study into the feasibility of transforming some of those spaces into affordable housing, which could be done much more quickly and would cost much less city money? And then you could use the HPD lots either for low-rise housing or for open space, which this community desperately needs because, as you know, there are 17 high-rises going up right here. So I really think it's important to take that into account. I don't mean to just complain. I would love to see more affordable housing here, but I want it to be done efficiently and effectively and not amid tons of vacant buildings. It seems really irresponsible and environmentally damaging. Thank you.
Did HPD have any response to that, or?
I mean, I think that's a really good idea in looking at, converting commercial and vacant residential to affordable housing. And certainly, we will take that idea back and we should probably start looking into that. But I think the truth is we are still in a housing crisis for sure. And I think, and COVID has definitely impacted those in need so much more. So, I mean, I know it's going to take time to see exactly what the impacts of COVID is on the city, and that is changing every day. I mean, and we don't really know what the future holds for the city, for this country. I mean, there's so much uncertainty, that's for sure. But we do know this planning process is it's a long-term process. So what we're talking about today is to plan for the ability to build a few years from now. And so we want to make sure that we have the ability to build, to make sure that people low income or middle income, those who can afford to live in this community, is able to, especially for the low income seniors. So that's, and I think those rates will change, and it's really hard to verify exactly what is going to happen a year from now or a year and a half from now. So we definitely want to open, keep this dialogue open, and the idea of looking into converting commercial space into residential would definitely expand our housing stock, and prices of housing would hopefully come down because of it. But I think for now we have to kind of plan for these two sites that have been underutilized by the city for a really long time, and so that's what this conversation is about today.
All right, thank you. Next, we had a question from, I'm sorry, it's either Louise Galdieri or Louis. Apologies.
Hi,
I don't know if,
can you hear me?
yes, go ahead.
Hi there. Okay, well, in a way, Daphne asked my question, but more broadly, what I'd like to know is, why are we being presented with conclusions? You said that you spoke with stakeholders and you drew conclusions, and the overall conclusion that you're going to go ahead with development, which is how you began the presentation, when there is, so far as I can tell, no publicly available analysis of the current housing situation, no publicly available discussion of your findings from conversations with stakeholders. I'm a little confused here. I don't see any documentation that would lead me to believe that HPD did its homework before making this decision, but rather it seems the decision was made and now you're backpedaling and looking for ways to justify it. And you're going to issue an RFP now without any zoning parameters. That's a meaningless RFP. It's impossible to respond to that in any meaningful way. I want to build a 400-story tower, or I want to build a 1-floor hut. There's just no way that RFP can mean anything. So I would like to see HPD do a little more preliminary work, show the need in this neighborhood, show the need to build on those specific sites, and specify exactly what you plan to do before you issue an RFP. I think this is bordering on arbitrary and capricious. So that's my comment.
Okay, since that was a comment, unless someone from HPD wants to address that specifically, I can move on to the next question.
It was a question. It was, why haven't you presented any analysis to the public? Why haven't you made this analysis public? Why haven't you shown how you came to your conclusions? Why haven't you shown your work? That's the question.
Thank you, Louis, for your question. I guess I'm not quite understanding. I mean, this is what we normally do from experience from the city-owned sites that we have across the city. We don't have that many anymore. HPD doesn't have that much sites in our jurisdiction, and I think we've been tasked to try to create quality, affordable housing across the neighborhood, across the city, on city-owned land. And because of city-owned land, we're able to leverage that, and we're able to get affordable housing. We're able to get community facility uses for those housing. So this is an RFP calling for developers and nonprofit developers to submit their ideas based on the things that Catherine laid out in the presentation tonight. That we have a commitment for senior housing on one of the sites, in order for it to be efficient to construct, it has to be, hit a certain number of units. So that's one. And then we have an opportunity to build another 100% affordable housing on the other site. And as this process goes on, and I really, I want to just reemphasize and reiterate that this process is very long, that this is a very, very beginning conversation of this process. And we're coming to you and showing you these. We have two sites, and the city has intention to build affordable housing. We're the housing agency, and this is kind of what we do. And so once we put that feeler out, we get ideas back, we evaluate those plans, and then, based on, a bunch of stuff, including developer capacity, experience in building, their designs of the site, based on feedback we're hearing from community during this period, on massing and such, and also we're looking to extend the existing playground on, is it Dean Street? On Dean Street, slightly, to expand the passive open space there. So we're not building on the entirety of the city-owned land. So with those parameters, we want to see, hey, what is your best shot? Give us a good project that we could bring back to the community. And then once we have that, because it's city-owned land, we can't just sell it, right? We have to come back to the community through the uniform land use review process. And I know because we don't have that much land CBA, we don't come to you that often, but we did last year with Weeksville NCP. So that's an example of city-owned land, HPD-owned land that we needed to go to the community for ULURP, for disposition and UDAP. And so it would be the case here as well. But in addition to the UDAP and the disposition of city-owned land, we're also coming back to the community board for your review, approval, and input on the rezoning that is being proposed. So I think, like with a lot of RFPs, our intention is building affordable housing. And that is the fact. That's, our intention is to build 100% affordable housing on these two sites. And then we're asking people to come back with their ideas, the best idea and the best building that fits into this neighborhood, and what we hear from individuals, and there definitely is a need for affordable housing. So I think, I'm not sure that fully answered your question, probably. But,
it does not answer my question, and it does not inspire confidence that HPD is taking the community seriously. I think what you're doing is you're presenting us with a fait accompli, and then you're telling us to just cope with it.
That's not our intention, but we are here to listen to you. So I think, any ideas you have for these two sites, we are here to listen and to take notes.
Okay. I'm going to just keep moving. I know that there's a lot of people who've asked multiple questions. So what I'm going to try and do is just keep going and go to each person individually. So if I skip over a second question, then perhaps we can go back and people can ask additional questions. But this will give everyone the best opportunity. So there was a question from Leslie Dan that was next.
Hi, I just wanted hopefully two quick questions. It seemed like Site A on Bergen is only using half of the parking lot, and I wanted to know why it's not using the full parking lot in its footprint. And also just a practical question about the survey on the HPD website. What's the deadline so everyone knows to fill out your survey and input on the map?
Catherine, are you able to get that? I think the site A is the one on Bergen, correct, Leslie? That. So yeah, so we actually don't own the other parking facility there. So what's being shown on the map is the city around. The one that isn't kind of circled around is privately owned. So we're only talking about the property.
Okay.
I think Catherine's having some mic issues. I think she maybe is trying to speak, but we can't hear her.
Maybe Catherine, if you want to add anything to the chat to respond. And the other question, I guess, is the survey, if there's a deadline. Do you have an answer to that?
If you could just put the deadline on the website, that would be great, because I don't see one. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right, so I'm going to just keep going. I have a hard time reading the chat at the bottom while I'm trying to keep track of the questions up top. So next we had a question from Amy Sumner and Dan Jacobson, if they're on the line to ask their question.
Yes, but I have to find the question. Why don't you read it out if you can?
So the question was, well, and that maybe this, it was, how can you issue a meaningful RFP without specifying zoning parameters?
Can someone answer that?
Yeah, can everyone hear?
Is that Catherine again?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
Sorry, I'm having a lot of my connection. Okay, thank you. Having a lot of issues with my connection. Was how can we issue the RFP without a zoning district? So we are identifying a zoning district in order to give developers an idea of how to respond to that, in order for us to get projects that we can compare in a meaningful way. And this is, we will view the solutions that we receive.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up? So it sounds like you're just assuming that the zoning will be changed for both projects.
Yes, I think we are. Sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
We are assuming that because of the project goals out, in order for us to see all of those project goals addressed, we do need to specify a zoning district and give developers an idea.
Okay. We had a question from Elaine Weinstein. Just need to unmute.
Okay, good evening. Actually, I'd like to follow up on that last question. If you are submitting zoning goals and you have an understanding of the zoning you're going to be requesting from developers, I think it's appropriate to share those with the community so we can comment on it before you include it in an RFP. And by the way, that wasn't the question I submitted, but I'd like to follow up. So Catherine, if you could answer that, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think that it's not about zoning goals, rather about the floor area and heights on both that are needed in order to achieve all of these project goals. So there's a lot of different zoning districts that can achieve that. We are identifying one. We may see proposals that would propose within that district or something else and meet those goals. But I also want to reiterate that we would be coming back to the community with the project that is proposed for, or rather designated for, your feedback.
I appreciate that, but there are many, many people on this call who have already stated, either through writings to you, letters, and comments on last calls, that R7A is not a zoning that we are supporting. And therefore, if that's what you're putting into your RFP, we have real concerns, and we think you need to reflect what a majority of the community would support.
Yeah, so our community visioning report is of the feedback that we heard from the community. At this point, we cannot say that the majority of community members have expressed that they do not support that. Right now, our data does not, we need to finish collecting data. And I hear that there's not support for the R7A among some people, but there is support from others. And we're presenting a comprehensive picture of everyone's visions who are participating in this engagement.
Okay, then we'll make sure that you get a lot more feedback on that. Second question, however, is you mentioned open space. I'm just interested, or we're interested in understanding where you see this open space being added.
Sure. There's the side of the Dean Street site closest to the playground itself is the area that we're looking at in order to square off the playground.
Okay. And then lastly, and this is more a request, that we ask for HPD to put together a much more holistic, a broader holistic review of the entire area, and including M Crown, because right now M Crown, we understand, is on hold, yet you are moving forward quite aggressively with these two sites. Now, as you know, many of us support deeply affordable senior housing, but we would like any kind of zoning change or large construction to be looked at in a much more holistic way. And I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, Elaine, we appreciate that comment. I think that's good feedback for you to let us know on the website through our map and through emails as well. I also wanted to clarify that this process is not going faster than our process in general or overall. This is the timeline for the RFPs. This is an HPD project, and so we are following our process and with the timeline and milestone timelines that we assign.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, moving on, and I appreciate people asking, two questions that relate to each other. I just ask people be a little just thoughtful of how many people want to ask questions. So if you can limit it to one or maybe two, if it's a two-parter, just so we can keep moving and make sure everyone gets time. There was a question from Jesse. I don't have a last name. I don't know if Jesse is on the line still. If I don't hear from him, I could ask the question myself. Okay, so Jesse's question, I think it is pertinent, was has there been any consideration to sell or trade the land and use the funds to purchase larger parcels with better zoning in less expensive neighborhoods? It seems you would be easier to achieve your goal of creating more affordable units that way.
No, we haven't considered selling a city land. I mean, we're the housing agency, so that is our mission. It's the policy, and also we actually don't have a lot of land in neighborhoods like this. And I know it's high value, but it is our opportunity to bring folks, give them the opportunity who can live here otherwise. So as Catherine mentioned earlier, the question of fair housing is definitely in play. We want to further expand, opportunities for people to have access to the same cultural amenities that a lot of people here enjoy in this community, and we definitely want to do this in a responsible way. Sorry, it's been a really long day. So thank you for joining. Definitely want to do this in a responsible way. So we are not, we haven't considered selling this property, for money, let's say.
Okay, Michael Richards.
Hi, it's Michael Rogers.
Apologies.
My question is, why isn't there a more holistic look at this whole zoning question? Most worrisome thing I've heard tonight is that the zoning would be put into the RFP, which is basically going to bake it in based on our experience in this community. And then the size of this rezoning area would be decided later. And that has enormous impacts on the community. We've already seen here in North Prospect Heights. So we really think it's irresponsible, particularly to ask a community to support a proposal that is at this point vague in terms of A, what the zoning is, and B, how broad that zoning would be. You could be opening up several new blocks in this neighborhood to redevelopment by other developers who might well not be as nicely intentioned as the city is. And, we have, rent stabilized tenants living in areas that could easily be affected by rezoning. Why not a broader look? Why not more details?
So as Catherine said, we will be coming back after we have the zoning districts, for the community. And right now, we are coming to community, not for an approval because we have no project. We just have a project. We have two pieces of land that we want to develop. And for an RFP where we could evaluate RFPs fairly across the board from multiple developers and multiple submissions, we have to have, some sort of parameters. And so we do have, we would have that one district for the site. And then once we have a project and through experience of other sites, what we was with the developer, with the project sponsor, we would work with DCP in understanding of how that proposed project at that site, what sort of, how far the zoning district should stretch to make it make sense. Because as you know, both of these sites are mid-block. So we need to discuss sort of the zoning rationale with DCP. But again, as Catherine said, it is hard to give a real answer to that question on what the zoning district and boundaries are at this point, when really we don't have a project. And I think that this conversation would be much easier and we could answer these questions a lot better once we hear back, from developers, once we get actual proposals and massings and renderings that we could show the community, because we have to come back. We have to come back. And when the ULURP has started, we also have to do the developer has to do an environmental assessment statement, which looks at the impact of not just the proposed buildings on the city sites, but depending on where the zoning boundary is, how that rezoning would impact the sites that are being included in the district. So, we don't manage the zoning map. So that is something we need to work with DCP, when we have a project. But right now it's so premature. We can't just, it's irresponsible to say like, yeah, the district is going to go to the avenues is roughly that. But because we don't really know, we need to have that conversation when we actually have a project, and to work out those issues, because some of them are like a little more technical. So when we come back to the community board with a project, we want to be able to be, actually point out where the district is and how it's being drawn. Without that, we can't really say.
At that point, though, the general community input is, I'm afraid that those of us living in the Atlantic Yards impact area know that once the horse has left the stable, things are kind of over for us in terms of having a voice. That's why I think so many of us are concerned now when we see what looks like a similar experience happening. That's just a comment.
No, thank you for that. And and obviously you guys have gone through a lot with Atlantic Yards, and I could definitely see, where the city Atlantic Yards was through the state. And it doesn't matter, right? It's just all city, state, government. And so I could definitely understand, the sort of distrust in when we come to you with that. But it's not for our case, like the ULURP, the actual ULURP process is we're coming to community board CB8 for an approval for support. Whereas I am not sure with Atlantic Yards, it was the same process there. But in our case, for the disposition of city land and for the rezoning that would be needed for the project that we're proposing, would require an environmental assessment statement. And then if it's a rezoning, is a worst case scenario to study the impacts of, on traffic, on school seats, if there's impacts on historic resources, right? This is close to a landmark district. All of those things will be done, and it would be disclosed to the community. And it's a formal process. ULURP is a formal process where we have to come back, and the board then, with the project in the zone district, you could speak up, you could just vote it down. We hope you don't, because we're coming to you so early to talk about these projects and why it's so important for the city to build, the two affordable buildings on these two sites. And I hope, you don't feel we're steamrolling here, because again, it's this is very early on. We will be coming back once we have a project, before the certification of the project, and definitely during the ULURP process itself. So there are many touch points for the community to speak up on this.
Okay, thank you. The next question was coming from Alyssa Keel.
Hi, it's Alyssa Kyle. And so I wanted to ask about, you mentioned that having one larger building is more efficient financially than two smaller buildings, which makes sense for economies of scale and whatnot in affordable housing. But can you talk a little bit about how it is determined and what would need to happen on site A in order for two larger buildings to still be financially feasible, and what the intended or desired relationship between the two sites is? So will it be the same developer? Is site A expected to have higher AMI levels in order to make the overall project need less subsidy? Any details you have with that would be helpful, and whether, if an RFP will be issued for both sites separately, or only will responses only be accepted if they include both sites together?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Alyssa. So this would be one RFP, but we are evaluating the proposals for sites separately. So a developer could apply for both sites, and if they do present the best proposals, could be awarded both sites. They could also be awarded only one site. So one site will not depend on the other. For financial feasibility, we're really looking at financial feasibility on each site. So for site B, that SARA program, fully separate from the site A and the program there, we are seeing financial feasibility at that 75 unit threshold. So as long as we achieve that, that site is good to go. For the site A, it would also undergo a similar, depending on what program would be there. I will add that also has demolition costs, and so that also increases the cost of development, and that could impact the budget and what programs are feasible there as well. So that site by itself is also considered separate. Did I get through all your questions?
Yeah, with that, I think so. Just one other question. So the quote unquote commitment for 80 to 100 units on these specific sites, where did that come from? And if you can talk a little bit about under the seniors first, you mentioned there's commitments for preservation and new development. So what are the respective commitments under those? Overall, how many are supposed to be new construction versus preservation? And then where did the commitment on these specific sites come from, the 80 to 100? Like, which entities or agencies determined that?
I'd actually have to get back to you on the exact details of how that commitment came to be, unless someone on my team has the details for that. But to answer the part about the other strategies, that is a city-wide strategy. And so these sites were committed for new development, but there are other sites and buildings where we are pursuing those other strategies, such as the aging in place and preservation. I can try to follow up on an FAQ question to if you're in seeing how those play out on other sites. I can try to look into that and try to update you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I can like follow up in email too. So thank you.
Okay, we had there's a question from Peter Crashes. Peter?
Hi, sorry, give me a second to unmute. I want to just first to explain, because I think I also agree strongly with this notion that we need a holistic plan before this proceeds, but I have some zoning questions. But the zoning, the concern about a holistic plan comes from the interaction between new development that's been approved here already in this immediate area, right on the same block, and these sites, immediate on the same block as Dean Street. We have so many different unresolved problems here, and you're talking about open spaces being something that you could be addressing, and that's really great. But there's something the community has asked for, especially with the potential that the park in Pacific Park may not ever happen. So, and you're adding in, thousands and thousands of units of 6,430 units of housing potentially, and maybe a little less if some of the buildings aren't completed, and 2,250 of those affordable units, plus a lot of empty, what we see now as empty retail space on the ground floors of the buildings that have been constructed. So we have a lot of different issues that need to be addressed. And what we see here and with M Crown was a proposal to address these things with looking at zoning across the district, but also looking at public realm, potential public realm improvements. And these HPD sites were included in those. So we don't understand why this is moving forward. And Lynn, I definitely appreciate the way you're describing interacting with the community moving forward. But the reality, and I think Michael Rogers spelled this out pretty well, is that once that RFP is issued, the zoning parameters are pretty well cooked in because the baked in because the building scales will be established, and we're not convinced that actually we don't think that should be happening without addressing some of these larger issues that are assigned to our neighborhood already. Because you called us a high opportunity, like an area rich with amenities. This is not the neighborhood that we're in. We have lots of wonderful things like good transit. We have great, for those who can afford it, good shopping, but we don't have the open space. You can look at the ratios and you'll see that. We don't have the space for pedestrians that a lot of other areas have, or we have a bunch of like design flaws in the project Atlantic Yards, which are going to directly even impact on these sites. Like you have just at the Dean and Carlton intersection on Dean Street, potentially very large intersection delays that will impact these buildings. And you have a parking garage that's just open that's going to have a one entrance right down the street that could be producing during arena events really some pretty magnificent traffic jams. So, I mean, we need to be thinking about this holistically and really talking about what the community needs are in a different way than I think I hear you saying. And because we are actually the neighborhood, the immediate area that's carrying a lot of the weight of the new affordable housing and the new development in this whole district. We already are that. So, the city can't keep having the same idea over and over without addressing the things that we need addressed at the same time. And I think there are plenty of people on this call who know what I'm talking about. So I really implore this committee to say, whoa, wait a second. There's no rush. Let's talk this through. I personally, the North Prospect Heights Association, we strongly support the use of these sites for senior affordable housing. Actually, I would say that both sites should be used for senior affordable housing. But at the end of the day, taking the time to do this right matters. And what you're proposing is, we don't even really quite know what we're doing on Bergen Street. We just want to hear what you want. But it will entail a change to the zoning envelope, and very likely a broader zoning district will come out of it. And on the Dean Street side, there isn't the same kind of precedent in the R6B district for out-of-scale development. Newswalk building may be across the street, but it's set back 100 feet from the site, and it's in a C4 C4-4 or C4-2 zoning district. It's not in the R6B. So when you break that R6B district, you're creating a precedent which will potentially set underway some displacement. So indirect displacement. I think we've worked really hard on that block to retain, after a disaster in terms of displacement with Atlantic Yards, with people wrenching story. I mean, I think we'd like to share with you some of the wrenching stories of families getting divided because of displacement, not just direct, but indirect displacement. And so when you put it in a bigger building on that block, you're opening up an avenue to other people who are for-profit property owners looking around and going, you know what, I'm getting squeezed between Atlantic Yards here, this building there, and I see that one is for senior affordable housing, but you know what, I have a good argument to make that my light is infringed upon, or there's a precedent on this block for a bigger upzoning for myself, and they will go for it. Everybody here knows they will go for it. And that's where the indirect displacement, that's direct displacement actually, but I mean, we will see it. I promise you we will see it. And so I want to go back also to even because I think hidden in all of this, and each one of, even like the notion of an open space benefit, is that what you're probably really talking about is that they're their rights, right? That you would be taking a specific zoning envelope, moving. Are you, because you can't say that you're going to fit 75 units of senior housing inside of the site on Dean Street without some of what's getting displaced going on the top. So I think, can we just be of the building that's being built? So can we be clear what we're looking at here, and what kind of mechanisms do you already know are going to happen with the kind of things that you're proposing here?
So Peter, we hear your concerns. Thank you for that. It's definitely taking notes here on what you were saying. I want to make sure that we are understanding your, just because we did hear a lot of concerns, so I'm not sure what the question is.
The question, well, I'm going to have another follow-up observation, which is related to process that. But the question here was, I want you to be providing much more detail about what you're thinking in terms of zoning, because I think that you can't fit 70. We know that site on Dean Street, in R6B, it says 58 units. You're talking about 75 units minimum, I think, with the senior housing. So what is the minimum zoning envelope for that building that you need to put there? And are you shifting air rights? So that's one question. And I think it would be similar on Bergen. It's actually like you're just starting with the zoning envelope and saying you're asking us how we want to fill it. That means you guys know what zoning envelope you want. I mean, it's not like, so why don't you just be explicit here so that we can talk to you with, in the way that you want us to, about how we're supposed to shape this neighborhood. You're not being specific. You did the same thing during the kickoff meeting. And we had to squeeze out of you that there's going to be extended zoning districts. The DCP they basically said, we don't know what it's going to be, but yeah, there's likely to be extended zoning districts. So come on. Let's get real here. You can't come to this committee and come to somebody who has been through what we've been through and knows what we're going through still on a daily basis. And everyone talks about construction. It's not construction, it's operation. operation and implementation together with the city doing nothing, even though it has the power to do stuff. And actually, frankly, the community board itself is responsible for some of this. Some of the members here know that because this can be done much better. So we want you to tell us, first off, how we're going to get, why this is proceeding without a holistic plan, and why you aren't. I just want you to tell us specifically what you're doing with the zoning, because you know it. You can't tell us that you know, you don't know what you're doing on Bergen Street when you have a sketched out zoning envelope there for sure that you're filling in the program into. You're just asking us for a program. And in terms of the Dean Street, you have a specific unit minimum, so you know, and you're talking about adding open space, so you can actually tell us what it is now. So why not tell us what it is? Please.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, that was a lot to unpack, but if I'm hearing correctly, so the air rights you're talking about, you're talking about what we discussed as like future open space on the Bergen site, right? So whether we're using floor area that's associated with that portion, since we're not developing on it, are we going to use that floor area on that building? That's one question. So I'm not sure. We're going to have to get back to you on like how we calculated, whether how that envelope to fit the minimum amount of senior units on the Dean site. So we would get back to you on that. On the other stuff, these are, they're very, very small sites. And I think, I hear a lot of frustration with the community members here because of all the development that's going in the area. And so this is another one. And so I fully appreciate that point and do not want to, dismiss it in any way. And so we will, try to get you as much information as we can. But, I want to just go back to our earlier point and even I might be belaboring it a little bit, but the amenities that we're talking about here is not just, not just transit, it's also good schools, it's also like high health, outcomes. So that's why we think it's so important to develop here and not to sell it and to use the money to buy in a neighborhood that, that real estate is cheaper. I mean, so that's why we are coming here to try to develop it. And then I think, Catherine, do you want to speak a little bit on kind of the zoning question at this time, or do you think it would be something that we could go more in depth during the urban design portion of these workshops?
Oh, this is a committee that's actually meant to be discussing the value of what you're proposing, and so what are you proposing? That's what I'm asking. I'm a public member of the land use committee. I'm a committee member asking you that question. Please specify the zoning envelope. You do not, Lynn, because I know you care. I really do. We've spoken. I know you care, but I also know that you're not answering my question. So I'm just asking you. You very clearly you have to know what the options are that you have for the Dean Street site, and you have to, for sure, since you're asking for a program for the Bergen Street site, without any you must know what you're roughly speaking, what you're talking about for the Bergen site. It's specified R7A on the website as being what you're proposing. There's one step down from that. That's R6A. Those of us, we all know that. And then it drops down to R6B, which is what it already is. And you've already acknowledged that you can do 58 units in each site. So you can fulfill wherever this 80 unit commitment comes from. And to clarify that, those 58, you can put those together and clear your units on both sites. So again, let's be clear what you're proposing, because it does matter on the ground for the community around it. 100% matters. So this is a housing committee date, but it's a joint housing and land use committee. So we should be asking you, what is this proposal really? It's not a ghost proposal, it's a real thing. So you should be able to specify to us what the details of the zoning are here. I just ask you to do it again. It's the same question.
So I think to achieve, the 75 on one site, we couldn't do it on the current zoning, right? That is for sure, 50, 58. I mean, I don't even know if we can get 58 on a site. And that's, I think that would just result in a financially infeasible project here. And because we want to optimize and maximize the ability to provide housing on these sites, we are looking for a larger zoning envelope, but one that is not out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood and some of the buildings like right across the street. And I mean, to be honest, I think if Catherine wanted to step in, I know we had talked about we've included the R7A in the talking points.
We did, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so we are specifying the R7A on both sites. And so to address a couple of your points, one, us splitting it up between the two sites, again, leads to two small senior projects that are inefficient and inexpensive. And time when we also need to be mindful of the amount of public subsidy that's going into these projects, we are looking for that efficiency as well. Both, we're looking for that efficiency as well. And for the site A, that is correct. We do not have a program specified yet. We really want community engagement to inform what should be put there, what affordabilities we want to see there. But again, we have to take into consideration the project goals here. It's not just housing, it's community facility as well, and the square footage that comes with that. And with the cost for developing that site, we are looking at financial feasibility as well, which is going to result in proposing more units on that site than the current zoning allows for. And so we don't have a program for that. I do want to specify that will be informed by this community engagement process. But we are proposing the R7A as an example of what could be there, and what could accommodate that project.
And I just wanted to say, and this is the second point that I wanted to make, was to Catherine, because we've been, a couple of weeks ago, we approached you guys about a problem with the email address for the website. And since then, I've gotten more feedback that there's a problem with the emails. And actually the site map that you show for the site B, Bergen Street, or site A site, the Bergen Street site, I've also heard that that's not accurate, that it should include 520 Bergen as part of the HPD site. And we looked on Acris, and it looks like that's all been merged, 520, into one tax lot, so it makes sense. But what you're showing on the map and what you showed during this PowerPoint is actually a smaller site than it actually is. So I just want to ask, am I correct?
Yes, so we've been in contact with the community member who alerted that the email address has been corrected on the website. We do ask that if you see it incorrectly in other places to please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to correct that. And as for the maps, I believe that was corrected as well. I'm going to have to double check because it sounds like as of today it was not, but do ask for your patience and understanding.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I think that in terms of the email address issue, we raised that with you before the kickoff meeting, and so if they were still having trouble with it sometime quite recently, that took some time to get fixed. So, and maybe that explains some of the input that you're getting might be limited in that respect. Just to let you know.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We did address that quite a while ago, and we seem to be in connection with a community member who has alerted us, who has been speaking with us for quite a while with the correct email address. So we are aware. Thanks.
Well, this has been truly exploratory. I see that we do have a quorum for the Land Use Committee members. We have 10 of those folks on the line. So if we want to explore some business this evening, we can do a roll call and entertain motions if Ms. Granville feels the same and she has the same alignment and presence of the Housing Committee. Ms. Granville?
Can I just say there was like, I think 3 more people who I hadn't gotten to, if that matters. I know we're running short of time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sachs. Again, I do have a quorum of the Land Use Committee members, and I can run through that if I can see enough hands to say we want to do business this evening and put an item on the table, especially related to the zoning, a question on the zoning. And I'm pretty sure people can figure out where I'm going with that. So let me make sure it's apparent to everyone that we have a quorum for the Land Use Committee. Princess Ben James, please unmute yourself and say aye that you're present. Okay, this is not going to work. Robert Callahan.
Aye.
Nora Daniel. Present. I think I hear you. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Thank you, Ms. Daniel. Ms. Granville.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan. Okay.
She was there. Oh, okay. She's raising her hand. Did you see her hand? She raised her hand.
Thank you. Okay, call your name, please unmute yourself and announce your presence. Peter Crassus, I know you're here, Peter. Where are you?
I'm here.
Okay. Sarah Lazar.
Present.
I see you. Robert Puka.
Present.
Thank you. Irsa Weatherspoon. Please unmute yourself and say aye. I see her panel, but no response. And our itinerantly present Sharon Wedderburn. No. Okay, so we have lost our quorum and our opportunity.
No, Ms. Tyus?
Yes.
Kathy Island is here. You did not call my name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy. Let me mark you down. Okay, that's good. That's good. Let me go back and see if we do have a quorum. Nope. Sorry. Next time we'll advertise a business meeting rather than a discussion, because I would have loved to entertain a vote on the position on the R7A and above, whether or not that's something we want to encourage or discourage in this planning process. So I'll put that off for another meeting in the future, near future, I hope. And I see there are some more questions, so I will ask Mr. Sachs to check in the chat for additional questions for the HPD representatives this evening. Thank you.
Apologies. Okay, so I'll just keep going. So the next questions, it was coming from Kathy Island. Ms. Island?
Yes, sorry, I was unmuting myself. I wanted to thank the city planners, the team that's here giving us this presentation. Thank you very much. And I just want to reiterate that a number of us in the community have really had some very serious discussions over the past 10 days about this notion of holistic planning. And we all in the immediate neighborhood, the 3 or 4 surrounding blocks as part of the North Prospect Heights, really support senior housing in our neighborhood, but it's being, I think what we're seeing in your presentations is it's unrelated to what actually happens in our neighborhood. And the notion of zoning first and talking later, it seems such a backward process. And I'm trying to form this in a question, but it's a question to you to please listen to what we're saying about the need for a closer look at the conditions in and around the sites that you've chosen, and that you could make a commitment to this community. And I understand you're gathering data, but there's a lot of data that I don't think you're hearing. So my question is, could you please consider the notion of holistic zoning as part of good city planning rather than the process being backwards? Because once it happens, as we've seen in this neighborhood with grave consequences, you can't take it back. And we would really like to be part of the project to offer senior housing. And it would really be, again, I'd like to second what Peter's saying. I think it would really help if you tell us what you're thinking of doing, because it's very hard to imagine you're asking proposals for a site on Dean Street, on Bergen Street, Site A, and you don't have some idea of what you're looking to build there. I don't think that's respecting our community, our land use committee, our housing committee, or the community board. Thank you very much.
Anvil, I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, I was just asking if there was a response. Otherwise, I think there were just two more people who I hadn't gotten to. And I can ask, Sharon had a question, but she had to step away, so I can ask her question. But let's go next to Gib Viconi. Gib, are you still here? Gib might have left. So let me just go. I can ask their questions, but let's just keep it going because I got to find it. So I think the last person who hadn't had a chance to ask any questions, I believe, was Hector. I'm trying to find it.
Just wrote question from Hector Robinson.
Yes. Do you have a question?
Just alerting you to the fact that Hector wrote question from.
Yeah. No. Oh, you're not Hector.
Yeah, I think Hector might have left. He might have gone to the CB9 meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, then let me, if it's okay, I can ask Sharon's question. She asked me to. And so let me find that just for a second. It's hard to scroll the chat. She wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about the subsidy mix that would allow for the commitment for Site B. For example, how would the subsidy mix support households between 60% and 100% of AMI to community members that have been displaced?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Sorry, my sound went for a second there. But to clarify, Sarah buildings are limited to seniors in the income bands between 0% and 50% AMI. So it will be limited to that population. And I didn't catch the second part of the question about wider community and people who have been displaced. So if you could please repeat that.
Yeah, sorry, I gotta find the question again. So she was asking how the subsidy mix would support households between 60 to 100% of AMI. How would the subsidy mix? I don't really get the question. I'm sorry, how would the subsidy mix support households between 60% to 100% of AMI to community members that have been displaced?
Okay, yeah, so there's a couple of things in there. So only 0% to 50% AMIs. And for these senior buildings, they do go through the lottery, the housing lot. So you might see, I'm not entirely sure how to answer the part about the displaced because the building is marketed through the housing lottery, so it would be open to New Yorkers.
I understand. Okay, so that concludes every questioner. So there were additional questions from people who have already spoken. So I'll just ask for the chair to direct me on how to proceed or move on.
Adam,
Yes. You're muted, Ms. Granville. Oh, still
No?
muted. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Gibb had a couple of questions and I can't find them, but his questions were actually questions that other people had not brought up.
Really?
So,
I thought
yeah.
I looked at Gibbs and all of them seemed like they were responding to other people's
Okay.
questions.
I just want to say that I appreciate the people from the community bringing out certain points because some of us who have been on the board have gotten so used to the way HPD does things. So I'm happy that you're questioning the process because I understand what your concerns are. And when I chaired the committee some years ago when Atlantic Yards was being built, everybody had concerns with the way the process had gone and people were not happy about it. But at that time, we had a borough president who loved it. So it went through. But I'm hoping since this is going to be a ULURP process, that it would be a lot better for the community in terms of input and in terms of insight than Atlantic Yards was. Because basically, once the state took over, they just bulldozed everything and they paid ULURP no attention. So I'm happy to hear differing viewpoints and I'm happy to hear new viewpoints on what we've been looking at for a long time. Ethel, you can make your remarks. Ethel, are you still there?
She appears to be, but she's on mute.
Oh,
Trying to unmute myself.
okay.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Back on mute, Ms. Tice.
Yeah, I'm having a problem. I'm stuck here. Okay. Okay, now you can hear me now, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so basically I think this was a repeat of what is on the website. And if we had a quorum opened with the idea of doing business with this item, and a roll call, it would have called for a motion on the zoning to provide HPD with true feedback from the community, because I'm hearing from HPD that people in the community said this, that, and the next thing, but we don't have a record of that. And we don't have a record of HPD coming to either the Housing Committee or the Land Use Committee on this item in the past. So that is a bit mystifying to me. And going forward, I think we should invite HPD again. I'm not sure exactly when. Maybe they can suggest when they want to come back so that we can provide some real guidance in a structured way after another discussion where some of these things have been cleared up, and see if we can put something on the record so that HPD can point to factual feedback from the community board on this project, on both projects. Unless there's anything else, old business, new business, I would turn it back to the Housing Committee Chair to wrap up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I want to thank all of you for your indulgence. I hope that everyone had a chance to express their views. I'm hoping, as Ethel said, that the next time we meet, we can actually have a vote, and that way we can actually memorialize what people are thinking, because we will have some notes from this meeting, but it was the first time that HPD actually came to a joint meeting, to either housing or to land use, to answer questions about this particular project. So I'm happy that so many people got to express their views, and I'm happy to hear that people don't think about things all the same way. When you have everybody saying the same thing at the same time, you really don't get appreciation for what other people think. So thank you all. And if we have any veterans, happy Veterans Day. Ethel, if you don't have anything else to say, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I had some last questions.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, so so a couple things. So it's clear that everybody has a lot of thoughts about the rezoning question, and I share in the desire for answers about the zoning envelope. That it kind of seems like, from what I understand from what you're saying, HPD isn't exactly in charge of that as much as DCP. So I was wondering if there could be, I mean, I know that everybody has tons of meetings, but I'm wondering if there could be another meeting where DCP could be here to answer questions about the zoning envelope. That's imagined. But in terms of questions more about the HPD side of things, I was wondering about the ownership of the land. So, it is, I think a lot of people talked about what a tremendous asset it is to have city-owned land in our area that could be turned into affordable housing. I'm actually kind of excited about the idea of producing truly affordable housing on these sites. But something that I'm concerned about, and the reason the envelope question is so interesting or concerning to me, is about the possibility that the rezoning would give, free rein to the surrounding buildings, since their FAR is pretty low.
Excuse me, Sarah. Adam, could you close your mic?
Thanks.
Am I making noise? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it would incentivize, it would kind of give a free pass to the buildings right next to the sites to be able to go much higher, and they would be producing no affordable housing. So anyway, but that's the envelope question. But in terms of the sites themselves, it seems like with these affordable housing projects, usually the practice is to sell the piece of land to an affordable housing developer, who then builds affordable housing, and there's a contract that establishes for how long the affordability is guaranteed. And I was wondering if that's what's imagined for these sites, or if there's the possibility of the city retaining ownership of the land, or if there is a community land trust who could be sought out for ownership of the land. I mean, I think a lot of people in the tenant movement are talking about the need for social housing, something where there's tenant control, and where the profit motive is removed from the picture. And I know that that's not necessarily how the city has traditionally done things, but I'm wondering if these sites could be possible sites for truly social housing. So.
Whoever has their mic open, please close it.
Thanks for the question, Sarah. You're right. So I think the way we imagine this for most of our city sites, we convey it for a nominal fee to developer. And then with it, we attach, land disposition agreement, as well as regulatory agreement to make sure that they keep units affordable for long term. In most cases, it's like a year term, and then at the end of the 30-year term, there's enough teeth on that contract to make sure that they extend it for another 30-year term. And the way we imagine for a lot of the senior the senior developments, the senior housing developments is, we do it through a nonprofit, and their mission is usually to keep their housing affordable. So in those cases, we see a very long-term affordability on those sites. And then what you brought up with CLTs, that is something that the city is definitely exploring. I can't say we have a lot of successful examples up until this point. So in terms of how it works, we're still trying to figure out like how best that works. And I'm not a lawyer, but we do have like lawyers looking into this question, because it is definitely something a lot of community groups across the city and nonprofit developers are very interested in, to keep the units and affordability in perpetuity, and so that they maintain that. But right now we just don't have like a standard model that we could apply here, but it's definitely something that the city is looking into. But for these two sites, I think what we imagine is what we've been doing before. It's just, we will convey for a nominal fee to get the affordability for a very long term.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, in the chat, somebody posted about the interborough CLT, but just as another model that's out there, the city of Rochester did, there's a community land trust up there with, hugely affordable housing that is actually controlled by the tenants and is actually quality housing. I mean, I know it's another city, but it is possible to do things.
Yeah,
could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, we'll definitely suggest that. But I think with the CLT model, and I could be wrong, is I think it only applies to sort of home ownership model. Like that's what we're looking at now, mostly sort of affordable co-ops, and because it has to do with like ownership of the land. So I'm not sure if that would particularly work well with the senior housing, the senior affordable housing here on one sites. But we will, we're always trying to explore all those questions. And on the envelope, I think that's a good idea. We should have maybe a longer, more in-depth conversation with DCP as well. But we do encourage folks to join our next urban design workshop, where we will be talking more about the envelope and the massing. And I think maybe after that, then we could come back at some point with the community board, and there'll be an actual, a shape for people to talk about. So right now, everything is so abstract right now, so we're just trying to do this in steps, so that it kind of makes sense to all of us.
Before we go, Ms. Granville, I just want to mention that Catherine indicated to me in the chat that they are very eager to listen to any questions or unanswered questions. So I just would encourage anyone who didn't get to ask one of their questions, although I do believe we got to all the questioners, that they can this email, and I'm going to read it twice just so everyone can have it. But if you wanted to send any additional questions to them, please send it to mwberfp@hpd.nyc.gov. So that's a lot of letters. So let me just go through that one more time. That's mwberfp@hpd.nyc.gov. So I hope everyone got that. Otherwise, I'm sure you can email the board and we can get that to you. So that's all, Ms. Granville.
I would ask that the HPD representatives send us a copy of tonight's presentation, which has that information with the phone number and some other gems in there. Is that possible, Ms. Zhang or Mr. Veras?
Yeah, I believe so. We can email the presentation over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Ethel, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, thank you for your hospitality and joining the two committees together for tonight. And we'll explore a date to reconvene on this. Maybe we should try to do that now based on what HPD was saying earlier about the timeline. I'm open to suggestions. The workshop, design workshop reconvention is the 18th. Can we look at something in between the 18th and December 10th to have another joint meeting?
May I ask that the timeline be revisited because it's way too aggressive to take the community's input in a responsible way?
Who said that?
I did, Louis Galdieri.
Oh, okay.
All right, so now December 10th is the Thursday of the first full board meeting for December, of the full board meeting for December. So I would ask HPD to work with us here on setting these dates and advertising that consultations are being had with the community, but not really saying it's with the community board. So it looks like a good date for to reconvene on this after the workshop, design workshop, November 18th would be sometime in early September. I mean,
You mean December?
December, and then to ask that the wrap up report back not be on the same night as the community board for the district, the full board meeting. I mean, how are these things being done? And yet HPD is advertising a consultative interface. I don't understand it. So I'm strongly recommending something later in December for a reconvention and a wrap up. Can we explore that, please, HPD?
Yes, we're going to touch base again with the district manager in order to finalize the scheduling here.
Ms. George had to leave for another meeting, which I should also be at, for the Economic Development Committee, which started about 7:15, 7:30. So she had to leave. So I will definitely, as chair of the board, I will definitely be asking her to communicate with you to look at a date sometime between December 14th and the 18th, where we could explore this. There is an in-crown
meeting.
Yeah, on the 14th. I think that's city planning. Yeah, that's city planning. So we've got 4 days in that week, from the 14th, 16th, 18th, 14th, 16th, 18th, 17th, or 18th of December to have those two meetings. If you guys are willing, if HPD is willing to work with us on that, we're creeping up on the Christmas holiday. So if you would look at that, I think people would be more convinced that this is a sincere effort to communicate and understand the concerns of the people in North Prospect Heights, and the western end of Community District 8, where there's been a lot of development, so much development that one could stand back and wait for the street to cave in. There's so much building going on. So what do you say, HPD?
Yeah, we will touch base over email to make sure that we have the right dates and are including all necessary parties here.
Okay, so we're trying to make sure we cover all of our bases. Everybody is free to come. So we're looking at the 14th, 16th, 17th, or 18th of December, if you would please, for those two meetings. Thank you.
If that's it, we also want to thank the community board for giving us this time to present to you all.
Thank you.
We're very grateful that you decided to come out, and so that we can share what we feel and see with you being down here on the ground, so you guys know that the decisions you make affect real people and families. A lot of the work that's being done is pointing at the high rises that are going up in Atlantic Yard Specific Park and attempting to harmonize with that. And I think that is not the best way to plan, to say, look, with the tall buildings over there, we can build tall too. So we want to take a closer look at that. And we thank you for coming in, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Unless there's anything else, I would ask the Housing Committee Chair if she wants to close the meeting.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that Ethel had had a chance to say what she needed to say. And at this point, I would like to close this meeting and thank everyone for their time and for their input.
Second.
Good night, everyone, and try to enjoy your holiday tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Granville.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, HPD.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.